All right, here we are. Graydon Miller.
Here we are. We're on a new time with 80 miles per hour anthology #1 as we take on the contents and present a stellar edition with presenting two amazing new poets who made their international debut in the pages of 80 miles per hour anthology.
That's right. We're here hanging out at the headquarters of Graydon Miller Books with Graydon Miller himself. I am Patricio Solis, editor-in-chief of this anthology that we're going to keep talking about, that we talked about last time. We talked about Aldo Tambellini, who is an amazing Italian-American poet that we published a few years back and that we're still working with. He's about to turn 90. So I want to just say hello to Aldo Tambellini, who's probably watching at home in Cambridge.
Yes, and he's watching as readers are unfold this amazing facet. At the end of his 9th decade, his facet as poet being known to more and more readers.
Yeah, and so today we have the anthology with us that you're holding, Grady. Excuse me, I made a little cup of coffee there. That you're holding onto, and it's a beautiful anthology that has several poets, several short story writers, and today we are moving on to the next writer, who is...
She is...
Florencia Lobo.
Florencia Lobo,
let's look at the anthology, actually. Here it is. Actually, yeah, Florencia Lobo. Let's talk a little bit about Florencia Lobo from Argentina. From what we know, so we can begin with their autobiography a little bit, perhaps, or
yeah, she's from the southern tip of Argentina.
She's from the southern tip of Argentina, Tierra del Fuego, I think, right?
That is correct, and
which translates to land of fire, land or land of flames, and it's a quite an interesting place to be from.
Was it a stark land, kind of a land where the houses are huddled against the,
I think so,
shores and the cold, and
yeah, people
have austere spirit,
and there's something to that in her poetry, right? She's from Ushuaia, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, the province.
And we do have the biographies of all of the writers here. So we say she was born in 1984, Florencia Lobo, in Tucumán, Argentina, but when she was a newborn, her family moved to Ushuaia, Tierra del Fuego, which is in the very southern tip of the continent, where she grew up. So she's from there, and then she studied film, literature, text correction, and she's one of our contributors. She has contributed a few poems to our anthology from her poetry book, El lento deambular de las tormentas, The Slow Wandering of Storms. Now you translated that from selection, but you also translated this very title.
Yeah, the slow wandering of storms, El lento deambular de las tormentas.
So, which was published in 2018, and we picked 5 poems from that collection, I believe. 5 poems that are part of our anthology. More than 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 poems. Translator Graydon Miller. So Graydon, let's start a little bit.
It was a privilege to get to know Florencia through her poetry, and the poetry, hers. It is a reflection of, I think, Tierra del Fuego and the formative years in those provincial towns.
Right.
And she's depicts nature and a closeness that I think it encapsulates the physical beauty and something spiritual at the same time. And it's an absolute joy to translate. I don't.
It's kind of sparse, right? Her poetry is. And
well,
it's very nature bound.
I'm going to say it is. It dwells in it, and it's, as you'd say, like for a. There's not an ounce of fat on it, yet it's full. It's full and ripe at the same time. That's her elegance.
It's elegant. It's elegant. It's spiritual. it's natural. Um, and how was it translating? How would you say the process was? Her lexicon is one of nature. It's not one of the self, or it's not one of as
Yeah,
opposed
it's
to
not,
say
it's
Aldo
not what we'd
Tambellini, which
say.
is full of like popular culture references sometimes with the Mr. Potato Head and other things like that.
Yeah, nor is it lyrical, and
No, it's not
about
lyrical.
the lyrical eye, and whom 8 billion tragedies and comedies are happening in this one
Right.
eye. That's the lyric.
It's more like she sees life through the eyes of nature, and whatever that reflects gives a little kind of wisdom to herself
Yeah,
or to the
true.
reader.
Truly,
And but tell me about the translating process. We actually in the anthology 80 miles per hour have a kind of way of translating, right? So a kind of policy, or not policy.
we have
but,
liberation. It's translation with liberation, and in her case,
Mhm.
It's so beautifully designed, like nature and shell and rocks that have been
Right.
polished smooth by the pounding of the sea. And I think I've been getting infected by this. The poetry is there.
So
There's not the incitation to improvise and come up with some daring trope. It's something you want to stay close to what she's written. You know what breeds terror in a translator? Translators are probably souls who have lives of limited drama and danger. So what gives terror to the translator is that word or that phrase that's not immediately graspable. You got to turn to the encyclopedia. In her case, I think it was a species of animal, a species of bird from that region, Tierra del Fuego.
And now we're gonna read a few of the poems. I read them in Spanish, and maybe Grady, you can read the English translation. We can do it side by side.
Yeah, that's great.
So if we had another anthology handy, do we?
Well, let's go see if it's in the neighborhood.
Well, it might be. So if we can find another anthology laying around, we can do the translation, kind of like go one line by line. We do have a copy. Great.
Here.
So
This is.
why don't we do it? Why don't we? I'll read part of it, and then you can read the English line, and then we can talk about how it was translating it as a kind of process.
Yes, let's go. And
Okay. So do you want to do it kind of stanza by stanza? Would that work?
Yeah, that's nice. Do it stanza by stanza, not line for
Now,
line.
also, you lived in Mexico for 10 years, correct? In Guadalajara.
That is correct.
And so your Spanish is mostly sort of Mexican Spanish, and the one from California and all of that.
yeah, California Mexican
and-
Spanish
And she's from Argentina, so the actual language might be a little different. Did you find any of those issues there, or not so much?
not so much because it's a very clean.
She's universal.
Clean and
right?
universal language, and it was so for those of us who inhabit this international space
International
of
space,
literature, it's open to all. You know, it's of literary quality and clarity. It doesn't. It's not regional, extremely regional.
It isn't, right? She's more universal, but the next poet is a little more regional. Oscar Noviembre. We'll talk about him in a little bit.
Yeah.
Whom you also translated. But let's start with this poem, yeah?
Yeah, we're on.
So I'll start with the Florencia Lobo. That's the name of the poet. And the title is, now I'm going to switch to Spanish, Archipiélago. And then she has a little Portuguese phrase, right, like at the beginning of the poem. penetra surdamente no reino das palavras. Did you translate that?
Yes, I did.
What did you translate it as?
Carlos Drummond de Andrade, who obviously he writes in Portuguese,
Right?
and the epigraph. I never figured out which is, or epitaph. No,
Not epitaph. I hope not. Well, I don't know if he's...
Penetrate deftly into the realm of words.
Now, you translate it from Portuguese, in this case.
That is correct.
Being that Spanish is your main language other than English, but, you know, you can reach into Portuguese, you know, and I try to read it, or probably butcher the actual Portuguese.
Yeah, the written Portuguese amazingly close to Spanish, but yet somehow different.
Right, the translation to the Spanish is penetra sordamente del reino de las palabras.
Yes.
Sordamente, no.
That's...
How did you translate sordamente? Or
deafly.
Sordamente? Deafly. Wow, that's a nice English word for a Latin word. So that's interesting. Anyway, so let's get into it, yeah?
Yeah, and it maybe in this telling, we thought what she meant, and obviously had huge significance for her, penetrate deftly into the realm of words.
Penetra
And I think that
palabras.
may be a reflection of her infusing into nature, and maybe recognizing from the beginning the articulateness of nature over the
inarticulates
in tongues and swollen utterances of human, you know.
I know.
That's the poet giving up on words in the beginning, and yet not. Yet it's the poet's faith.
It's the poet's fate.
And I think...
so let's read it. I'll read it first. Se entra en la palabra archipiélago buscando islas.
You enter the word archipelago. Sorry, folks. It's archipelago.
Archipelago. Archipelago. Isn't it?
Yeah, I gotta look it up.
Archipelago. Se entra en la palabra archipiélago buscando islas.
You enter the word archipelago looking for islands.
Pero dice la etimología que lo único hallable ahí es el mar.
But the etymology says the only thing that can be found is ocean.
No un tejido de orillas, un islario bordado por la espuma y el tiempo.
Not a knitting of shores, a cartography of islands bounded by foam and time.
Solo el mar inmenso, el archimar.
Only the sea, the immense sea, the arch ocean.
Por lo demás, nada sorprende. Toda palabra es por fuera un borde y en el fondo agua siempre removida.
As for the rest, nothing astonishes. Every word's exterior is a border, and in the depths, water always stirs.
What an interesting last word that you chose, stir. The water stirs. It's quite,
Yeah,
it has a level of onomatopoeia in it. The water stirring, right?
The sound of the, yeah, and it's alive.
It's alive.
And
how is the translation? You know, the translation process is such a kind of magical, whimsical thing almost, and yet it the meaning and the feeling of the poem, you're able to capture it, pushes through to the other side.
Yeah, that's my wish, to transmit something of what I felt in Spanish when I read her poem, and not to intervene in that, you know, for it to come out naturally, as it did. I can't remember worrying about any phrases more than the Portuguese epigram,
which she chose, but she didn't write. You know,
she did not translate it.
She didn't. Well, she translated it to Spanish. interestingly enough, at the end of the poem. But okay, so we have a thematic kind of themes emerging in her poetry, right? So there's the archipelago. And archipelago in English is a collection of islands.
Chain of islands.
A chain of islands, right? And she's saying here that you go into the word archipelago looking for islands. You translated it much better. You enter.
You enter the word archipelago looking for islands. But the etymology says, that's where she did her research,
right.
Obviously says the only thing, so it's defined by the ocean. The archipelago is defined by the ocean.
No un tejido de orillas, un islario bordado por la espuma y el tiempo. It's almost like I need your translation to bring the meaning of the poem out.
Not a knitting of shores, a cartography of islands, bounded by foam and time.
Wow.
Foam and time.
Cartography of islands. Is that the...
Let me look at her verse exactly right now. Yeah, I guess there is a classic example of I did find the liberation in the translation.
Sure.
And we, that will not be found in the...
Because it's not about exactitude of words.
But I found
it's exactitude of feeling and exactitude of, or an approximation of imagery. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, and certainly I felt that it was innate. It was...
Would you mind reading it again?
Innate, yeah. Not a knitting of shores, a cartography of islands bounded by foam and time.
Interesting. That cartography of islands is quite wonderful, but it's a kind of deviation from the precise meaning, but it's a kind of...
addition.
An addition or...
insertion.
Not an insertion, but an evocation of the actual meaning behind the words, right?
Yeah.
So great. I mean, and that goes... I think it would be interesting to read some of our philosophy of translation that we have followed in this anthology.
Yeah, and let's
do a couple poems and then we'll maybe
exactly. And later, it's coming soon. Our philosophy of translation, which speaks to this.
We'll do the next one here. Bandada. Rápida con rumbo al norte, cruza el canal una bandada de cahuequenes.
Flock. A flock of wild geese, swiftly heading north, crosses over the channel.
That's so interesting, the geese. But we'll continue with the poem. No se tocan entre sí, no se separan, nada altera el mecanismo del conjunto.
Their wings do not graze, they do not separate, nothing changes the group mechanism.
Son una arquitectura trasladada en el tiempo, una corriente exacta.
My gosh. They let me translate it right now, please. They are an architecture translated in time, an exact current.
Un punto en el horizonte que crece y decrece según las estaciones.
A point on the horizon grows and shrinks with the seasons. So does my heart bitten by the fog.
Así como mi corazón mordido por la niebla. Wow, this is a good...
So does my heart bitten by the fog. Yeah, that is...
this is a good poem.
That's the poem I remember that I had to look up the type of bird it's referred to in there.
Cahuequenes, you translate that to geese.
Yeah, wild geese.
Wild geese. I didn't know the name of these. It might be a local name for...
That's why I know I got it...
what would be another translation in Spanish for geese? Wild ducks?
Would it be
Patos salvajes.
that or ganso?
Gansos.
Yeah.
Gansos, I think it's a more universal word for Cahuequenes or geese. I love those last two stanzas. Un punto en el horizonte que crece y decrece según las estaciones.
Yeah, and I now what I love about this one was the wings do not graze, they do not separate, nothing changes the group mechanism. Because that to me totally is a evocation of that visual we have of it's a V of seagulls flying over the horizon in that perfect formation. It's almost there. She lays bare this mechanism that of life and energy that it brings together groups of beings in ways that they may be individual, but they are in formation.
It's almost like the poems are timeless too, because they're just a human being wandering in nature. You know, there's no modernity does not touch them in the way that other poets might be talking about, like Malo Tambellini talking about
cultural
references, television,
places, geography,
the radio,
cities,
wars,
pop songs,
history, pop songs. She is a human being.
Tide detergent.
Talking about time, talking about nature, but not only talking about nature.
When she talks about foam and time,
but learning from nature. The same way we did thousands of years ago.
Yeah, she in a way she may be a ventriloquist for some cave person from Tierra.
Well, I mean, there's the idea of atavism. That is a really interesting idea that I've been thinking about for a long time.
Well, what's in the blood is enormous. We don't really
recessive genes or kind of like a harking back to a lost tradition or a lost way. Bringing it out into modernity and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There's something to that in Florencia Lobo, and her thematics are quite tight, quite tight. She doesn't really deviate too much from them, at least in this collection. I think that's wonderful about her poetry collection, and I really do recommend that folks go and check it out. You can find it, I'm sure, online, El lento deambular de las tormentas, published by El Suri Porfiado. Who knows, there might be one day a Graydon Miller edition of that, as there will be an Oscar Noviembre one.
I would recommend to people who read Spanish already, appreciate it, do seek it out. I found as a translator, it was one of those, it was a supreme pleasure to have that kind of poem, so subdued and elegant.
It's elegant. The language is elegant. That's
ripe with meaning to work with. It was, and you will discover it.
There's a little an element not of lyricism, but an element of deep feeling, right towards the end. Así como mi corazón mordido por la niebla. Now she flips, so it's a very kind of almost description of nature, and then she flips it. Sober description of nature, almost scientific, and then she flips it to a kind of her heart, which is heart is a very kind of a universal symbol for feelings, right, and emotion. So she flips it to that.
In a human, it always
right?
is. Yeah, it's a symbol for so many things, for warmth, for caprice.
Yeah, and you can
for Romeo and Juliet.
Every other song has it. So it's interesting that she brings that in, which kind of anchors the poem emotionally, right? Otherwise,
it focuses at the end very sharply.
Right. So there you go.
So does my heart, bitten by the fog.
Bitten by the fog. Así como. You just translated that. Así como to so. So
yeah, I went very simple on that one.
And I think you captured the simplicity of the actual poem.
Yeah, sometimes the rhythms and the syllables, there is the seeking of duplicating it in a new language, that feel and that opacity or that airiness and the other one is the islands bounded by foam and time. I find that almost a straight line between
Bounded
the English.
by foam and time.
Yeah,
Wow.
it goes. It's got a artery straight from Spanish to English to me.
Well,
For-
you,
yeah.
Graydon Miller, are able to find that artery from Spanish to English in a way that very few translators, as far as I know, can, and I have experience because we have worked with a lot of translators, and everybody brings their great sensitivity, obviously.
and their
But you,
fidelity.
you do not only bring fidelity and sensitivity and sensibility to the languages, but you bring a kind of sort of like guttural connection to the language from within, not from without, from the outside. You know, so when you translated for my book, Walking Around with Phantom Bukowski, which is a book of poems that Graydon Miller Press Books published a few years back, I wrote the main essay for the book, Walking Around with Phantom Bukowski, in Spanish. And you translated it to English, and I remember telling you that your English translation made the original essay even better than it was, or better than it was originally.
Yeah, thanks.
And you found some, you know,
Yeah,
I
it's
almost
kind of-
don't trust anybody to translate my own work from Spanish to English.
I
and
would
Graydon
say
Miller.
a canny English recreation of what was there.
And a daring one. You always do that. You take leaps and chances.
Yeah, we even
And you don't. It's like you're
There's
not.
one
You're
I
not looking
self-
for minutiae, but you're
Yeah.
looking for the overall feeling.
yeah, very much to transmit that. Yeah, and that's the texture, the feeling, the idea,
Yeah.
the relief of the language, the zest. It's
The zest.
it's pizzazz.
And the rhythm, and you like, because like obviously what you find here, it's much more sort of neutral and bare than what you would find in somebody like Oscar Noviembre, or like somebody like myself, where there's like an element of lyricism.
Yeah.
Right. So you're able to
Yeah.
like, you get in touch. And then, but then again, you've written in Spanish too. You just finished writing your novel
Yeah.
in Spanish, Mujeres con Navajas, which we will publish.
And with
Pato Cuervo
80 miles.
production, 80 miles.
80 miles per hour, Pato Cuervo Productions.
We will publish Graydon Miller's novel early next year, which is Mujeres con Navajas, which Graydon wrote in Spanish. So you do have a sensibility to the language from an original Spanish language creator, not only from an English creator, artist.
Thanks, Patricio.
Yeah,
And
it's wonderful. It's wonderful.
yeah, that gives me something, and I definitely.
And I will say it again, I would not trust anybody else but Graydon Miller to translate my work from Spanish into English. So I'm just kind of making my case for you to translate my book of poems into English.
So you get to read, discover something in the pages of that debut anthology as well.
I hope so. But let's keep moving on with Florencia Lobo's poems. We have.
Yeah, and I do want to mention
Yeah.
another contributor,
Mhm.
because there is Paul Delamico is somebody who
Sure.
contributed a piece of criticism, and he definitely qualifies as somebody who is one of the daring translators who can apply
Yeah.
his own element.
We have
And-
some really good translators
Yeah.
here from Spanish
He-
into English, and from English into Spanish, which we also did.
Yes.
And we'll talk about that. But I think we'll talk about that in a minute when we'll talk about the philosophy of translation. But let's go over a couple more poems, if you don't mind.
Let's. I'm looking forward to some of Florencia's most meaningful poems.
Well, here we have. Let me grab my cup of coffee here. El tiempo. Parece decir febrero que el tiempo es un animal del aire que se aleja.
Time. February seems to say time is a beast of the air that goes far away.
Sin embargo, su sombra queda y ahí se vive.
However, its shadow remains and it lives on there.
En el levísimo abrigo que da lo que ya no existe y permanece.
and the lightest overcoat that gives what no longer exists and stays.
The lightest overcoat. Levísimo abrigo. Wow, great. Another home run.
Wow, thank you. And I look at this.
Levísimo.
Now this
The
is
lightest. What an because levísimo, but you translated it to the lightest.
yeah. And what do you? I see it as
Well,
filmy, blowing in the wind. I see.
Right,
I often see things in pictures.
But you could have
Yeah.
translated it to the most light. You know what I mean? You could have translated it to the
most light. Yeah,
the
it's
very
levísimo.
light, right?
Yeah. No, it's I think lightest is.
And then you could have translated abrigo to coat.
But it's overcoat. Gogol, folks. Gogol. We know the Russians.
And crime and punishment, right?
You bet. And
That's right.
it's funny. Gogol, the comedian, I think he's the one who had the much tougher life than Dostoevsky and something. A less healthy life. Isn't that? I don't know what that
It's
means.
like they outdid each other
Yeah.
time and again, right? So
Buddy.
thematically, so we have, just to recap, we have the archipelago, we have the bandada. How did you translate that?
That one is flock.
The flock, and we have time, which she wrote el tiempo.
Oh, Bill, buddy.
She wrote el tiempo, but you didn't translate to the time.
No, nor, as I detected this time, it could have been weather. And
That's true.
I never asked her, and I can't imagine that.
Right.
I will say another thing about translation and literature: it is always a process. So we may be discovering other
We're always
routes,
discovering like nuance.
Yeah, buddy.
He's really
He's a frisky little fella, and
he's translating the poetry into animal language.
and I
into
know
dog
he could speak in perfect quatrains, folks. Here, at iambic pentameter barks.
All right, so here we go.
He's been around this
Let's go to the
time
next
long
one. Yeah. Nunca mueren las tormentas.
Storms never die.
A veces, cansada de existir, levantan sus aguas y se marchan a otro lado.
Sometimes their waters, tired of existing, get up and go somewhere else.
All right, De Vero. He's part of nature, right?
He's part of nature, and he's Chihuahua atavism there. You see, he's just trembling with the little fella.
Después vuelven a exigir los temblores y latidos de los que se alimentan.
They later return to extract the earthquakes and pulse of those who feed.
En las ojeras, en los tropeles, en la brasa donde anida la juventud del rayo.
On bags under their eyes, on mobs. Buddy, we got it.
Here you go, my friend. Come here.
They later return to extract the earthquakes and pulse of those who feed, on bags under their eyes, on mobs, on the ember where the youth of a lightning bolt nests.
Por eso, a donde voy golpeo piedras, enciendo fuegos.
So wherever I go, I pound stones, I light fires.
Primal.
Yeah, I feel like all of Florencia's poems, they bear reading multiple times, and I feel like reading this one again. Partly just to let's get it in a piece. Do you want to read it in Spanish first?
Nunca mueren las tormentas. A veces, cansadas de existir, levantan sus aguas y se marchan a otro lado. Después vuelven a exigir los temblores y latidos de los que se alimentan. en las ojeras, en los tropeles, en la brasa donde anida la juventud del rayo. Por eso, a donde voy, golpeo piedras, enciendo fuegos.
Storms never die. Sometimes their waters, tired of existing, get up and go somewhere else. They later return to extract the earthquakes and pulse of those who feed, on bags under the eyes, on mobs, on the ember where the youth of lightning bolt rests. So wherever I go, I pound stones, I light fires.
So nice. So, what's the meaning of the poem anyway?
That's why we can read it. We can read it many times, and
so that's why
it demands me to picture it, and to feel it. And right now, I'm right at in that place, the mystery between the words and the message and the meaning and the sound and the feeling.
That's all. That's what poetry.
That's the crossroads.
Right. Because the storms are wild and are timeless, and they awaken the spirit. Because they do that, I carry with me nature. I mean, that's my take. Anyway,
it's nature is pregnant with this stuff. Yeah, and the meaning of nature.
The meaning of nature.
We're creatures. We're looking and attributing meaning, and maybe it's all there. You know, the meaninglessness and the tenderness and villainy. It's all of it's there.
And in Florencia Lobo's world, you wherever you go, you carry nature with you because it provides you with a kind of guidance or a connection.
We got nature right here. Some nature, somewhat domesticated, but there it is.
Let's read the last one, yeah?
Yeah, the last one in English is Mirage.
You want to read it first?
Yeah, sure. We got Buddy. Mirage. Your whole body sings like the rain, and I am a bowl of water that water has never dwelled in. What an image. I am a bowl that water has never dwelled in. But what does the rain know of thirst? And what will it ever know about the mirage? And how it keeps me suspended over the horizon. Your whole body sings like the rain, but my thirst no longer belongs to the water.
Espejismo. Todo tu cuerpo canta como la lluvia y yo soy como un cuenco en el que nunca habitó el agua. Pero ¿qué sabe la lluvia sobre la sed? ¿Y qué sabrá jamás del espejismo y su manera de mantenerme en vilo sobre el horizonte? Todo tu cuerpo canta como la lluvia, pero mi sed ya no le pertenece al agua. Espejismo. Buen poema, ¿no? I mean,
Yeah.
good poem, right?
It is. I mean, and to me, this is a love poem. You know, this is maybe her most emotional poem in the group we selected, and
It's almost erotic, right?
Yeah, and my thirst no longer belongs to the water. I mean, it's a kind of deception or saying, you know, goodbye to something.
Right.
And but she's talking. This is again how much she dwells in in nature. She's talking here about a bowl the water has never dwelled in, and in the end, your whole body sings like the rain, but my thirst no longer belongs to the water. It's a desamor. It's a unlove, a story of an unlove.
And yeah, and it's a story of moving on.
And moving on.
Right?
That's it. Good.
But told through the language of water and the imagery of
the bowl and
of bowls and thirst and rain and mirages.
Yeah, this is very impressive.
Yeah, you know, it's its own voice. It's its own voice. It's its own thing, and I really do recommend Florencia Lobo's poems that we have here in our anthology, 80 Miles Per Hour, bilingual poetry anthology. Several poets, essay writers, short stories, all kinds of stuff, and we're gonna keep talking about it because we love the work, you know. But before we move to talk a little bit about our philosophy of translation, which you wrote about, I just want to kind of summarize the poems that we have looked at in terms of Florencia Lobo. We have Archipelago or Archipelago,
Yes.
which is a poem about the...
It's about language, but language described in natural in manifestations of nature. Again,
It's about the crossroads between
water,
etymology,
earth,
and geography.
Yeah,
Isn't it?
it brings the two together, and
Then we have Bandada, flock, which is about which is a kind of comparison between her own heart
you start with that and
this phenomenon of a flock of birds flying in the sky.
Yeah, and they're married, and it starts with the flock and ends with her heart.
Then we have El Tiempo, or time, which is about the it's a meditation on time.
Yeah, and what exists, you know, what time which erases all and it births all.
And that thing that remains when things disappear, which is a memory.
Yeah, and people who have the privilege or the torment of adding to years upon their years grow to know more of, you know.
Right.
There's so much that was but no longer is, and some people get they haul it around, you know.
And then there's Nunca Mueren las Tormentas, which you translated as The Storm Never Dies.
Yeah, storm never dies.
Which is about no matter where you go, you can carry the storm and be ready to adore, you know, maybe.
Yeah, that one's very, like, that really takes us to the cliff of poetry, you know.
Right.
I'm gonna
And these are just
ponder and wonder on that particular poem yet.
And Espejismo, which you translated as mirage.
Yeah.
It's about eroticism and love and desamor, or lovelessness, and moving on.
Moving on, yeah. It is kind of related to the one about the storms too.
Oh yeah, and they're all nature, right? And so that's Florencia Lobo is our poet of nature. And then, so before we jump into Oscar Noviembre, I would like you to, at the end of the book, we have your kind of take on, is it at the end of the book?
Yeah, it is. It's the afterword.
The afterword, right? Which is your take on translation. So, if you don't mind, I'd like you to maybe read parts of it, whichever you feel, or tell us about it, so that we can see what your philosophy of translation is.
Yeah, it's a belief. It's first of all a belief that yes, you can translate poetry. I mean, how many times is it said that some things are untranslatable? And certainly, if we're talking about poetry, we know poets who let's talk about Quevedo. Quevedo in Spain is an absolute master of the sonnet and defies translation.
Which Borges said that the one reason why Quevedo was not universal is because he's not as easy to translate as other poets.
Oh, and actually,
he should be universal.
You know what, Borges, maybe he's giving us a task in a way, because again, parting from the belief that it can be done, and the effects, the feelings, the value can be duplicated sometimes through other verbal means, and
talk to us about the idea of being faithful to the text.
Yeah, I'm trying to be faithful to my dog too here, and he's certainly faithful to me.
Yeah,
he's faithful to me. I think that from the early stages of my translating, something I was often blinded to was that I was faithful. I was very faithful to text, and they make language leaden. They sap the vigor out of it, and certainly when you're working from Spanish to English, and slavishly encounter duplicate all the prepositional phrases. And also Latinate words, you know, it saps the vigor of the language. And
can I read a paragraph
Yeah.
from your essay, and then you can talk about it? So Graydon Miller said in his paragraph, afterwards, in bifurcations,
Yeah,
which is a kind of neologism, maybe?
it is.
Coinage.
It may not be in the dictionary. I'm not sure. But to me, it seems like it exists.
It should
already.
be, right? Well, you used it. This is what we seek, to use the full verbal arsenal from the sublime to the vulgar and to the hyper-regional, so that the reader of each 80 mile per hour section is going to perceive the delights of each language and derive in each case the full idiomatic flavor, heralding a language and heralding panlingual regionalism, emancipated from the zeal of reproducing every meaning with exasperating fidelity. We turn our backs on neutral language devoid of geography in favor of a global regionalism, but not so limited in the sense of of world history, but rather cosmic, a la Walt Whitman.
Wow! Hey,
I
that really it says that is the kernel. That's the kernel of this philosophy, and maybe a manifesto. I mean, really,
it is a manifesto.
We have a manifesto there, and to which I want to add the words also of the Semite, the faded Nicaraguan poet, and yet a stellar figure, Rubén Darío, who said the whole idea of translation is you take the advantage of each language and play them, use them, exploit the advantages offered by each individual language. And
let's talk about regionalism.
That is a rich topic, because certainly I don't know if we're less sensitive to it in English now. I don't think English has been, or maybe it has been homogenized, but I know
to a degree,
dealing with contributors from different countries and translators, Colombia, Venezuela, Spain, and we get Ecuador here, our editor-in-chief. We have a panoply of different regional expressions and slang, and it's a buffet. It's a buffet of them, and it may seem baroque, and yet why shy away from these riches, these linguistic riches?
The idea is not to normalize or to homogenize, but to focus on that which is individually rich, right?
Yeah, and it gives it flavor, and it gives it it's ripe with culture.
Talk to us about what happened to you in Mexico.
Yeah,
in relation to that, when you were a translator or when you published a short story.
Yeah, right. I was translating in University of Guadalajara and had a wonderful boss, Mary Luisa Arias there, who often steered me away from the Mexicanismo, you know, the kind of the coarse language of Mexico, and also the Spanish that filtered in through my youth, because I grew up in a agricultural town in Northern California, and it was all around me, even if I didn't understand the meaning of some of the things, or certainly wasn't old enough to. And the preponderance on a literary, a standard and elevated Spanish, which comes comes from the academic world,
right?
And in my case, I say it gave me a standard, elevated Spanish with a little touch of Caribeño, the Caribbean, which is interesting, as opposed to the kind of things I grew up, which were all the words that people laugh about and play with, like pinche and.
So, but tell us about that anecdote with the newspaper. So, when you used it, or a short story, right?
Yeah, one of my short stories was published in the Sunday literary supplement El Informador, a traditional paper in Guadalajara. And that story, Rivales, I used the word güey, and I know that it's how the young guys in the story, that's how they talk, güey. You know, it's like dude, right?
Right.
All over the place, and readers around me and were really shocked that the editor had let that word "güey" pass. So I'm really proud to have
you broke that barrier.
Me of all people, I broke that barrier. And,
because you weren't held down by tradition, perhaps.
Yeah, but and also it was the street. I mean, I walked around the street, I listened to people, and it filtered right into the dialogue of the story. I mean, as I do yet, I will follow people, and just to pick up on what they're saying.
Right.
And
so I think that fed, you know, the our whole anthology, because we thought about, like, okay, so we have writers from literally Italian American, Ecuadorian American, Argentinian, Spanish, another from Spain, another from South Africa, America, Spain.
Oh, he's like the international kid.
Yeah, another writer from California, another writer from Morocco.
Guy from Morocco. And
another writer from New York. You who are from Central Valley and
Alta California, yeah.
Alta California, and another one
from
Nicole,
Romanian and Venezuela.
So it's a world
by New York, yeah.
of literature, you know, with different expressions in Spanish, in English, and as opposed to making it uniform, we chose to let the differences show. And sometimes, if a reader has to look up a word in the dictionary or imagine what it might be, then so be it, and it's great. It adds to the richness of it.
what something that is wonderful is we're coming out of a time, and this is, I think, with the globalization, with cities like Los Angeles, it's a capital where suddenly everybody from all these countries, they could all be Hispanic, and that, of course, is to speak Hispanic means at the root to speak Spanish, and everyone meets here, so it's this potpourri of expressions and accents and culture, and we're overcoming that tendency, maybe from even the 18th century and the time of the world of empires, where it was the idea was to elevate and cleanse language.
And we're here also ourselves in California.
Now we're making it dirty.
We're making it dirty, and also if you think about it, we are in California, right? And so we're publishing this anthology of literature and art ourselves.
Yeah,
and we're not waiting for. We're not sending our work anywhere. You're a writer, I'm a writer, everybody here is either a writer or an artist, and we chose stuff that we thought was great, and we chose not to clean it, right? Not to purify it, but to allow the texture of the language to come up.
There,
right?
It's true nature.
And I think it has to do with the fact that we are here in Hollywood, right? 2 blocks away from Hollywood Boulevard, on the west coast of the United States, the far northern end of Latin America, right? Northern California or Alta California, right?
Yeah.
And
which also has the quality, actually, of for most of the people here, they have passed through, I would call, a land filter, even though maybe or Venezuelans and Colombians arrive by jet. But an awful lot have flowed up through the corridor, yeah, and even passed over the desert.
But also ours are English. It's its own thing.
It came over on wagon train, and
we're facing the Pacific, which is facing China and Asia.
Yeah, there's
that's we're not facing east.
Yeah, we look to the Far East.
We look to the Far East, so that's east. So we push our language that way, and our epicenter is not.
It's
New England,
not a foreign capital,
or Chicago, or London. You know, we're globalized English speakers in California, with a heavy Spanish influence, but other parts of the world as well. And so we're pushing that language, and we're proud of our kind of desert-like situation in some ways, you know. In fact, you have a statue of Don Quixote over there who's holding an American flag. You know, so that says everything, right?
It really does, and we got the Don Quixote, and I got my Oscar over there, and my Spanish bull, you know,
and so we will keep talking about literature. Next we have Oscar Noviembre. I think it's a good time to take a little break, and then we'll come back to talk about Oscar Noviembre.
All right.
Thank you everybody for watching. We are 80 Miles Per Hour Anthology. We have published several books, including this anthology of literature, poetry, and art, and novels, short stories, poems. Look us up. I am Patricio Maya Solis
and Graydon Miller.
Thank you for watching. See you next time.
Did you see the watch run away? The clock ran away with it? So